Your jaw is on fire, not the ache of a bad night's sleep, something deeper, something living under the bone. You press your tongue against the tooth, and the pain doubles you over. There is no dentist, there is no aspirin, there is no one coming. For most of human history, this was not a rare disaster. This was simply what happened when you lived long enough. You assume pain used to be smaller because life used to be simpler. It wasn't. It was bigger. It lasted longer, and there was almost nothing you could do about it. By the end of this video, you'll understand why one cracked tooth could quietly become a death sentence, thousands of years before anyone had a word for infection. But here's what nobody tells you. The predators, the falls, the cold, those you could sometimes see coming. This one built quietly, inside your own skull, and gave you almost no warning at all. Let's go back. Somewhere between 40 and 70,000 years ago, in a limestone cave in what is now southwestern France, an older man lay dying. Slowly, painfully, for weeks, maybe longer. His name is lost. Archaeologists call him the Old Man of La Chapelle. He was found in 1908, curled in a shallow grave, and when researchers studied his bones decades later, they found something remarkable. Almost every joint in his body was riddled with arthritis. His jaw had lost most of its teeth long before death, the bone resorbed and healed over. A rib was fractured and mended crooked. The paleoanthropologist Erik Trinkaus, who spent years re-examining this skeleton, concluded something that changed how we think about Neanderthals entirely. This man could not have survived alone. Someone fed him. Someone helped him move. He lived for years in a body that should have killed him. But surviving is not the same as being pain-free. And what happened to his jaw wasn't even the strangest part of what science would later uncover. Here's the part almost nobody talks about. Tooth decay didn't start with sugar and soda. Researchers examining ancient skeletons across Europe and the Middle East have found cavities, abscesses, and worn enamel going back tens of thousands of years, long before farming, long before honey was common, long before anything resembling modern food. An abscess is simple to describe and brutal to live through. Bacteria get inside a cracked or worn tooth. They multiply in the soft pulp at its center. The body fights back, and the fight itself creates the agony. Pressure builds inside a space with nowhere to expand. Every heartbeat becomes a throb you can feel in your skull, a pulse of pain that seems to get louder in the silence right before you fall asleep, if sleep even comes at all. Today, this is a 40-minute appointment. Numbing gel, a local anesthetic, a root canal, and you drive yourself home an hour later complaining about the bill, not the pain. Back then, there was no numbing gel. There was no drainage. There was, at best, someone holding you down while another person tried to pull the tooth with a sharpened stone, a cord, or their bare hands. And if the infection reached the bloodstream, the toothache was no longer the worst part. It was the beginning of the end. This is where the story becomes less about teeth, and more about how the entire human body used to negotiate with pain. Simon Hillson's decades of research on ancient teeth revealed just how common these infections were, especially as people aged. It wasn't the exception. It was closer to an inevitability. If you lived past 30 or 40, chances were high you would face a dental infection with nothing to treat it but time, herbs, and endurance. So let's reconstruct that day. You wake before dawn because the pain woke you. It has already spread from your jaw into your ear, into the side of your head. Chewing is impossible. Swallowing your own saliva sends a jolt down your neck, sharp enough that your eyes water before you're even fully awake. Someone in your group has seen this before. They press a chewed willow bark poultice against your cheek. It tastes bitter enough to make you gag, but you hold it there anyway. Willow bark contains a compound related to what we now call salicin, the same chemical family behind modern aspirin. It doesn't cure anything. It just dulls the edges enough for you to breathe through the next hour. You sit near the fire because the heat feels like the only thing louder than the pain. Smoke stings your eyes and mixes with the tears you can't quite stop. Someone offers you fermented honey water, not for the taste, but because sugar and mild alcohol are the closest thing to sedation available. You take it anyway, and the swallow burns worse than you expected. By afternoon, the swelling has moved into your throat. Someone presses their fingers gently along your jaw, feeling for the hard, hot lump beneath the skin. If it bursts on its own, you might improve within days. If it doesn't, if it keeps building inward instead of out, the infection has a path straight into the bloodstream. Sepsis, though no one called it that, was one of the quiet, common killers of the ancient world. It didn't roar like a predator. It whispered through your blood, one heartbeat at a time, until it reached somewhere it couldn't be stopped. But here's the twist almost nobody expects. You'd assume this kind of suffering got worse the further back in time you go. It didn't. It got worse when farming began. When human groups shifted from hunting and gathering to growing grain, diets became starchier, softer, and stickier. Cavities increased. Some skeletal studies of early agricultural populations show far higher rates of tooth decay than in hunter-gatherer groups that came before them. The trade for a more stable food supply came with a hidden cost written directly into people's jaws. James Suzman, an anthropologist who has spent years studying the Jew/Hoansi hunter-gatherers of the Kalahari, has pointed out something similar about hunter-gatherer diets more broadly. Diverse, low-sugar, high-fiber food sources tend to produce fewer cavities than the grain-heavy diets that followed agriculture. In other words, becoming civilized didn't fix this particular kind of pain. In many ways, it multiplied it. So one of the most dangerous days in an ancient human's life wasn't necessarily during a hunt, or a fight, or a fall from a cliff. Sometimes it was something as small as a cracked molar, left to fester because there was no other option. No blade wound this deep, no animal this patient. And here is the mirror. You have almost certainly never experienced a dental infection left untreated for more than a day or two. If the pain gets bad enough, you go to a clinic. You get antibiotics. You get numbed. You go home the same afternoon and forget about it within a week. That convenience is so total, so complete, that it barely registers as a privilege. But for the overwhelming majority of people who ever lived, a bad tooth wasn't an inconvenience. It was a countdown, measured not in minutes but in days, with no clock and no certainty about how it would end. Your ancestors would have traded almost anything for one tiny white pill. Every time you brush your teeth, floss, or swallow a painkiller without a second thought, you are doing something that would have felt like sorcery to almost every human who came before the last 150 years. Your jaw is on fire, and for the first time in human history, that fire goes out in an afternoon instead of a lifetime. The greatest medical miracle you experience isn't surgery. It's never having to think about your teeth at all.